Welcome to Canadian Justice. I'm Christine Van Gyn, and today we're talking about gambling in Canada and the recent change to laws that made it possible for Canadians to bet on single-game sports. Now, let's be real, Canadians have been betting on single-game sports since they started watching sports in this country, even though the criminal code technically prevented betting on single-game events. Canadians have been spending billions a year on black or gray market sports betting. But this year, a Conservative member of Parliament from Saskatchewan proposed a private member's bill, C-218, that changed this prohibition. The bill got royal assent in August, which means provinces can now regulate single-game sports betting as they see fit. How have the provinces responded? And what will this mean for the black and gray market on betting on sports and for more niche types of betting? Here today to talk about these issues and more are two guests. We have Galen Flaherty, a Toronto lawyer with BLG, and Paul Burns, the president and CEO of the Canadian Gaming Association. Thank you all so much for joining me today. Mr. Burns, let's start with you. Why was single-game betting criminal for so long?
Well, there was a line in the criminal code that did permit sports wagering, because we have had legal sports wagering in Canada before this bill was passed for decades. You just had to bet on the outcome of more than one event. So they call parlay betting. Sports lottery products were available through provincial lottery corporations across the country, usually in having to bet 3 games, having to win all 3 of those to win your bet. That's not what customers really wanted. And so it's obviously the move for this change was really driven by customer preference and leveling the playing field to a degree, because as you said, Canadians have been doing this, but they just haven't been doing it legally and to regulated gaming. So
so Mr. Flaherty, as Mr. Burns and I just said, and as I said in the opening, is no secret that people were betting on single-game sports before this. Now, I'm not making any admissions today, but my husband is from Philadelphia. He is the one that requested I wear this shirt today. And the Eagles won the Super Bowl a few years ago. So how much gray or black market betting was going on before the law changed? Like in Canada, not just in my house.
Right. Well, it was outside of your house, and the answer is a lot, and a lot continues. There's a lot of wagers that Canadians are placing on unregulated sports betting websites. We've got estimates of up to $14 billion annually are going to these unregulated sites. Just in Ontario, we're talking about 1 million participants in that with those offshore sites, and it's about 80 to 70% of the marketplace is going to these offshore sites. So it's a significant percentage of the market. And what this change in the criminal code is going to do is it's going to put us in a more competitive position in the regulated market to try and claw back some of those wagers that are otherwise going offshore.
Mr. Burns, how easy was it to get around the old prohibition if you wanted to? And what were the penalties for using some of these black or gray markets? And were people actually charged under the criminal law? I don't mean just, bookies. I mean, were people who were placing bets criminalized?
No, it was very easy to place bets. And actually, the growth of online gaming over the last 20 years has been significant and was very easy because the law in Canada, we call it gray, because the law is really unclear. Particularly in the criminal code, where does the bet occur? Does it occur within somebody's living room on their computer when they're playing at home in Toronto, or is it the server that's located in the United Kingdom or the Isle of Man? And the law is unsettled on that. And so what most operators have come into the market under that premise of saying, no, it's the bet isn't occurring in Canada. It's occurring on our facilities offshore. And that was made it very pervasive. And so Canadians could use their bank cards, their credit cards, all of those payment mechanisms were very easy. We saw a lot of advertising that would occur for these sites under play for free models. But obviously those also led to play for money sites. And so it was really simple for Canadians to find that place. And even from, local bookmaking operations, predominantly run by organized crime, they even turned to the internet over time. And so it became very, very easy for Canadians to find a place to make a bet.
And what were the criminal penalties? We've only got about 10 seconds. Do you know what the penalties
Oh,
were?
they were minimal at best. Most law enforcement would say they would pursue bookmaking charges if they knew it could lead to something greater and more significant. So it wasn't a priority. It was a priority if it led to something more serious in crime.
We'll be right back. Welcome back to Canadian Justice, where we're talking about a change in the law in Canada that now allows betting on single game sports. So, Mr. Flaherty, now that the law has changed, Ontario has moved to regulate single game sports betting. So, what is happening in Ontario? What's OLG doing, for example?
Right. So Ontario is an exciting case right now as they're unveiling this new iGaming market, which is going to open up to private operators to register with a new subsidiary of the AGCO, which is called iGaming Ontario. And that's going to bring in private operators who are going to be able to offer their services directly to consumers in Ontario in a regulated way that protects consumers and enhances consumer choice. The OLG will continue to provide, their sports betting option through Proline, and they just unveiled Proline Plus, which is, still until the new iGaming market's unveiled, the only regulated sports book in Ontario. But it's exciting in Ontario to see this new market coming up that's really going to open things up. And I expect, we're going to see, and we have seen a lot of interest from operators across North America and across the world to coming into Ontario in this new market. And, we're very active in the space here at PLG, and we know that there's lots of land-based operators who are interested in getting involved as well.
Mr. Burns, what are other provinces doing? Have they all moved to regulate immediately as well, like Ontario did? And what are the differences between the provinces? For example, if I live in Ontario, can I place a bet on a Saskatchewan platform?
No, you can't at this point. Actually, Saskatchewan doesn't have an online platform to be offered at this point in time. But a lot of some provinces work on a residency rule. So you have to live in the province to actually play on the lottery corporation site. Others, you just have to be in the province, like Alberta. If you're just in the province of Alberta, you can sign on to the site and play on their site. And every province is really taking this a little differently. As the provincial governments have had jurisdiction over gaming for now 35 years, and they've been now evaluating it in their own markets. So what we've seen is obviously very quickly rolling out to online platforms. As I said, all provinces except for Saskatchewan had some sort of legal offering through the online platform. So that sports is up and running there. We're waiting to see as we call it, more the casino-based retail sportsbook model where people can walk in, maybe in like a sports bar type environment potentially, and place bets in those types of facilities. And that's what the provinces are now taking a little more time to take a look at the regulation, the offerings for those. Sports wagering is a product that's predominantly done online, particularly further that on mobile devices. So that's the trend of where sports betting is occurring. That's the trends we see from Europe and the United States. And so it's been very, very quick to get the online offering up and running. But retail is extremely important. It's a great amenity for casinos. They all are anxious to be able to offer it. It helps those attract customers to want to come, maybe play some blackjack, have a meal, bet on sports. It's a very great amenity for a casino to have, and they're anxious to hopefully see them soon. But as the provinces are still working on the details.
So, Mr. Flaherty, as Mr. Burns just mentioned, it's not just going to be government. So, who are the major players in the industry now that it's opening up?
Right. So in the other provinces outside of Ontario, it will continue to be the crown corporations. And in Ontario, we're going to see it opened up to all the big players, your FanDuels, your DraftKings, the Score is domestic here in Canada, but they were just acquired by Penn National Gaming, a large gaming corporation in the United States. So we're really going to see a lot of those, big operators looking to expand or acquire entities within Ontario to get access to that market. And then, domestically, you're also going to see companies like Rogers and Torstar have both indicated their intention to get active in the iGaming space and perhaps even the sports betting space. And then as Paul mentioned, the land-based operators are all going to be looking to get involved as well, as it's an important amenity for them, and maybe perhaps rolling out an iGaming product as well.
Now, Mr. Burns, we've got a minute for this question, but there's potential for uptick in addiction. So, what's the industry going to be doing to deal with any potential uptick in gaming addiction that this could result?
Well, it is, and it is an activity occurring and predominantly outside the regulated environment today, and that's one of the benefits, and that's one of the strongest arguments that we're making, actually, in the House of Commons and in the Senate, in why this should be done. Is because inside the regulated gaming marketplace in Canada, we have a very strong commitment to responsible gaming programming, education, in terms of everything from advertising to game design to environments, ensuring protections such as self-exclusion lists and access to treatment. So, and that comes through the government involvement. And so we've had that, and that's what's going to come as we bring all of this now to this regulated environment.
Mr. Flaherty, this law change allows betting on single games, but I know some people who like betting on some pretty obscure stuff. A friend of mine likes betting on how many minor penalties will be called in an NHL game, and he's really proud of how good he is at calling it. But my understanding is that this law doesn't necessarily allow for betting like that. And do you think it should? Because people who want something like that are just going to continue to go to the gray or black market for it.
So, well, first off, betting for the number of penalties is one way to watch a hockey game. But so you're right that this recent change doesn't directly apply to what we call propositional bets, occurrences, contingent occurrences within a game. But those have been offered already in some form under the current, legal sports offerings and regulated sports offerings. You can bet on over-unders and through ProLine already. But what this does now is that you no longer have to parlay those. So you'll be able to bet on those on a one-off basis. But to the broader point, I think we're going to expect to see those types of very popular propositional bet offerings expanded, especially as this new iGaming market is unrolled in Ontario.
So, Mr. Burns, what about other types of betting, not just on sport events? So you can get Vegas odds on just about anything. And I have a lot of friends who are kind of political geeks, and they actually look to Vegas odds for election prediction. So is there an appetite to expand event betting outside of sports and into other areas?
There very much is. In fact, even the lottery corporations in some of the jurisdictions in Atlantic Canada and others in BC, even through the parlay wagering, we're taking parlay wagers on things like the Academy Awards. Ontario has permitted it in their sports betting regulatory framework. And so, yes, there will be event wagering, whether it's elections or things like the Academy Awards, or even who's going to win Big Brother in the next, on reality TV. Those are all options. And it's a matter of ensuring the integrity of the bet and information so that it's fair, and they know how a contest or an award show and how the awards are decided upon, and is there controls and all of those measures. That's what regulators will do to verify, to allow those bets to happen.
Mr. Flaherty, what do you think the industry is gonna look like in 10 years? Are we gonna continue seeing more progress towards this, or does Canada have sort of this strong puritanical streak that's gonna continue to resist and progress in gaming?
It's interesting. I mean, taking it, from a holistic view, we look what happened with cannabis here in Ontario, and we look what's happening now with gaming here. Where there's an appetite and where there's activities that we know are going to occur in an unregulated fashion, and it's ultimately we can offer more protections and, gather revenue to otherwise allocate to government priorities. I think that's something that all of the legislators across this country have to look at. And so certainly this has been a big step federally with the criminal code being amended in Ontario, unveiling the new iGaming market. And I think that as we're seeing, in the United States, and the appetite for sports betting is huge, and it's growing and it's not stopping. And I think we're just going to continue to see sports betting offerings more seamlessly integrated into the live sports experience. And I think that we're going to see a lot of interesting partnerships between media companies and sports betting companies and sports teams as they all look to try to capitalize on this really heightened demand.
Mr. Burns, what about other types of technology? So do you think there's a role for cryptocurrency in online gaming?
I think there may be in the future. I think I think a question that the regulators, both from the financial services sector and from the gaming side, need to have better. There are exchanges out there that do crypto betting. Happens in an unregulated environment in most places right now. But understanding technology drives innovation, and that's it's going to come eventually, I believe. I just think it will take some time. But clearly, there's a lot of great smart people out there thinking of next new and innovative ways using blockchain technology and in the application of cryptocurrencies to be able to create new betting products in the future.
And we have about 30 seconds. Mr. Burns, how do you do age verification if these are going to be moved to online platforms? We don't want minors betting.
It's exactly right. And there's very robust technology for do age and geolocation, finding out where you actually are located. It's a strong component to making sure that you're in the jurisdiction, so you can bet, that you're not doing it from outside the province of Ontario, for example, or outside any other province. So the geolocation service, the age verification is very important. It comes through usually multi-layer and identification. All the anti-money laundering policies also apply to these operators. So it's a very robust system.
We will be right back. Welcome back to Canadian Justice, where we're talking about a change to the law in Canada that now allows single-game sports betting. So, Mr. Burns, now that this is allowed, what do you think is going to be the most popular sport for betting? And how does betting on an event like the Super Bowl or the Stanley Cup compare to more generalized games?
Well, clearly, obviously, NFL football is extremely popular even in Canada, and it does a lot of very high volume of wagering. I think that hockey wagering actually will prevail in Canada. I think because of the volume of hockey fans, and also what new technology is going to bring live in match betting on hockey. So betting on what's going to happen in the next play, or how many shots in a period, and that's the proposition bets in Ontario, that's going to be permitted. And so there's going to be lots of innovation coming on that front. But clearly, in terms of sports, baseball is also extremely popular, but we for Canadian bettors already. So when we look at products they bet on, I think there's going to be a wide variety. But Canadians got a great diversity of sports fans from all over the world that reside in Canada, and that's going to be uniqueness. I think there's going to be a lot of variety in the Canadian marketplace, from things from international soccer and cricket and other matches will also be part of the offerings. The sportsbook operators know there's customers and demand in the market, and so they're really looking forward to getting at it.
Mr. Flaherty, are we going to see a difference between which sport is the most popular and what event is the most popular? And just out of curiosity, Galen, have you placed a bet yet on a game?
I've placed lots of regulated bets in my life, yeah. But I would say you're obviously going to see spikes in demand for bets around major events, the Super Bowl, the NHL playoffs, the MLB playoffs. Hopefully the Jays make it. So you're going to see those kind of heightened spikes, but you're also going to see a lot of casual bettors who just it's a Saturday night during the leaf season that just want to put down a couple bucks and make the game a little bit more interesting with their friends. So there'll definitely be those spikes, but there's going to be a lot of casual betting that will sustain these kind of 10-month long seasons.
Yeah, that's a great point. So, Mr. Burns, what do you think a typical bet will look like? Are these going to be small numbers, or are people betting large amounts of money here?
I think it's both. And I think the uniqueness of single game betting is that you get sports fans that know a sport. They have a favorite team. They know the statistics. They follow the game. And that's why it's actually, as a product that, returns between 95 and 97% of the money goes back to the bettor in these cases, because they are small, unique bets. There are professional bettors out there who spend enormous amounts of money. They, again, will be there in the marketplace, there today. But there is a lot of money that gets returned to the bettor because it's a fair bet. And smart sports fans do that. And they do it because it adds to the enhancement of watching the game, and it adds to the excitement of cheering for their team. And that's what they like to do.
Mr. Flaherty, what do you think the biggest upside is for allowing single game sport betting in Canada?
first off is the consumer protection piece. We're having a lot of, so much of these wagers go offshore, and we don't have the responsible gambling measures and consumer protections that we'll have in the regulated market that we're having here in Ontario. But then I also think increased revenues, getting, a cut of this back to the provinces to spend on otherwise unaddressed priorities. And that's really important, right? There's a big net benefit here in a lot of ways. So I think the consumer protection, getting revenues back to the provinces, and increasing consumer choice in a regulated way is the three kind of highlights.
Mr. Burns, 30 seconds. What's the biggest upside that you see?
I think there's a benefit that we talk a lot about here at the Canadian Gaming Association. That's an economic development benefit. That actually there's jobs like companies like the Score that are going to be hiring lots of new people. They doubling their office space in the city in Toronto to hire technology workers. We have a great tech sector. We have amazing educated workforce. There's lots of infrastructure already to support that from the government and the financial community. I think we're going to see a lot of interesting new technology startups that support the sports betting industry. And I think that's a really exciting story yet to come.
Well, I want to thank you both so much for your time and expertise today.
Thanks for having me.
We've heard today about the change to a law in Canada that's made it now legal for people to bet on single-game sports, like the Super Bowl or the NBA championship. Something that's been happening in Canada for many years, but which was actually illegal under the criminal code. This change will keep the money from betting in Canada and will generate tax revenue, and it will also stop a criminal element. Do these changes go far enough, or does our puritanical streak run too deep? You be the judge. I'm Christine Van Gyn, and remember, a freer Canada starts with you.